Hey guys, how's it going? Happy, no intro this week. I'm sorry. It's not Homebrew Wednesday. It is, but it isn't. It's Friday, so we're doing the best we can. I delayed this week's video because I wanted to be able to have this beer ready for you, and it wasn't ready in time for Homebrew Wednesday. So happy Freaky Friday, or whatever it is you want to call it. And there it is. This is the beer we brewed last week on Homebrew Wednesday. It's the Brewer's Best. I think it's a summer ale. I think that's what they call it, if I remember correctly. And I have tasted it, so I'm not going to lie. It's no surprise to me, but I will go over it quickly. And the topic for this week's Homebrew Wednesday video is reusing yeast. Reusing it. Why would you want to do that? And how do you do it? Well, we'll talk about that, okay? Well, first, let's get this thing talked about. Before I taste it or smell it, I will tell you that it's a beautiful beer. You really can't go wrong, excuse me, with these Brewer's Best beer kits. They are amazing. If you can get them, if you go out and you buy all the ingredients separately, it's the same price, really. Basically, it's the same price. They're just putting it together in a box for you, and you're on your way. I don't make money off this. I'm not a sponsor or anything like that at Brewer's Best, or they don't sponsor me or anything like that. I'm just telling you from experience, okay? This is what I do. I give you the experiences that I have, and you can do whatever you want with those. Anyway, talk about this beer. This is a summer ale. Had the little spice pack in there with the orange peel and all the other stuff in there. A couple of Cascade hop additions. Nothing huge, all right? Pretty simple beer. And the aroma is incredible. It's just like it's in your face. It's like, wow. It's like a bouquet of flowers. And then you think to yourself, this is going to taste really strong. This is going to be a big beer. Well, let's give it a whirl. Very, very refreshing. And this one thing that that we all have to learn, some of us already know this, but some people don't, is that the aroma of the beer is sometimes different than the taste of the beer. Because when I give this a nose, I'm thinking, oh wow, this is gonna be intense. And then when you taste it, it's pleasantly mild and nice and balanced. Two different experiences. So that's why, pouring your beer into a proper glass so that you can get your face into it and you can give it a sniff before you take a sip of it. It's a whole sequence of experiences, if you will. Oh God, what do I sound like? What's that painter guy? I can't remember his name. He used to be on he died, but he was, anyway, okay. Somebody can put that in it slipped my mind. Anyway, put that little tree there and put that little leaf there. He was Canadian. He was a great Bob something. I can't remember. Anyway, great beer. You can't go wrong with these Brewer's Best kits, and there's other ones out there too, like the DeFalco ones that I've got here. Really great stuff. And this is going to be a pleasure to drink, for the next couple of weeks. Awesome stuff. One more. Bob Ross. Is that his name? I don't know. Anyway, it's got a lovely bitterness to it. Very subtle bitterness. Beautiful, subtle malt flavor. A nice overtone of the Cascade hops mixed with the flavors of the pack that we put in with the orange peels in there and all the other stuff. I can't remember what was in that thing. I just dumped it in. And it's the mouthfeel is great. You can see we got lacing there. It's a good beer. There you go. There should be a sound effect there, like cha-ching or something, or applause, I don't know. Anyway, okay, so cheers to that, and thank you, Jeff, for bringing this to me. It's a good experience. Awesome. I can't wait to have that on. I've got 5 gallons of it. Beautiful. All right, so why would you want to reuse your yeast? You got like a beer kit, or even if you're doing all grain, you got a package of US-05 or whatever yeast you use. If it's a dried yeast, Why would you reuse that? Well, I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, $2 for a package of yeast. I mean, is it worth your time to go through the trouble of reusing it? Well, maybe. Or maybe you're using a yeast that you paid a lot of money for, like $10 to $12, and like a smack pack or one of those vials, liquid yeast, and you did a starter and you went through all this trouble to make this great yeast, or to prepare this great yeast. And you brew your beer, you package your beer into bottles or a keg, and then you pour that yeast down the drain? No. When you go through all that trouble to to treat your yeast like that, to buy a good yeast and pay the money for it, and then, make a starter and get the yeast healthy and make it work, and then you pour it down the drain? No, you can't do that. You're still there. They're like, we got more work to do. We're still hungry. Come on. What's wrong with you? Yeah. You really need to think about it. Now, there's two ways of doing it. And one way is controversial. That's why I did it. You know me. But the other way is basically something that everyone's mostly heard of, is that you wash the yeast. So I'm not going to go through great detail how to do that, because there's videos on YouTube of how to wash your yeast. What does it mean? When you wash the yeast, you're taking out all of the dead cells, all of the yeast hop particulates and stuff, any other sediment that's down in there, that's left over from the wort. You're removing those things. Okay, and you're doing it using gravity, basically. So what you do is you boil some water, you get your beer, you package your beer. What's left is the stuff at the bottom of the fermenter, and it's good yeast. You boil some water, you let that cool down to room temperature, and then you pour that into your fermenter on top of the yeast bed, on top of the tube, of course, you're going to do this soon after you bottle or keg your beer. You don't let this sit around for very long. You got to do it pretty much almost right away. And you get that water, not too much water, just enough to get it loosened up. You swirl it around, get it loosened up, and then you leave it. Put the lid back on, airlock, and just leave it for half an hour, right? And then you get some containers, like jars or something like that. You sanitize them, of course, and then you decant the yeast into those, but you don't. What's going to happen is all the crappy stuff is going to fall to the bottom of the fermenter, and all the yeast slurry will stay at the top, right? And then so you try to get that into your jars, or however many, 2 or 3 jars, whatever it is, and you leave behind all the bad stuff, which you throw away, right? So now you've got these jars full of this nice looking yeast. It looks like about the color of a cup of coffee with cream in it. And then you let those sit for a few minutes, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. And then they'll settle out, and you'll notice how, it separates, the dark stuff goes down to the bottom, and the top is a nice, fresh, beautiful looking yeast. So you do it again. You decant those into further jars, sanitized jars. And then you let those sit for a few minutes. And I think by then you're going to have really nice looking yeast. You could do it a third time, but that depends on what it looks like. If it's if you still got sediment at the bottom, do it again. Eventually, what you're going to end up with is a beautiful washed yeast that is virtually free of anything left over from that beer that you did. Okay, there's going to be some things, flavors in there, but for the most part, if you're brewing the same beer again, you're totally fine to use that yeast in that beer, and it'll work. You can keep it in the fridge for 1 to 2 weeks, no longer than that, because it will spoil. I know that from experience. Whew, it goes bad after a while. So use it as quickly as you can, and make sure when you take it out of the fridge, you let it warm up to room temperature before you pitch it onto a wort. Very simple, Again, I don't have a video on this myself, but there's, you can look this up. All right. The second way of doing it, and I'm a bit of a pirate when it comes to this kind of things. I like to do things the easy way, So I like to try things. Now, you can really, some people, all they do is they bottle their beer or they keg their beer, whatever, and then they put their next batch of wort right on top of that slurry at the bottom of the fermenter. Right on top. Bang. You're done. You don't have to sanitize the fermenter. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to prepare anything. You just make your wort, and it goes. So I thought, well, I'm going to look this up and see, what is involved. So, what do people think about this? Is this possible? Can you do this? Some people do it. I know people who do it. Is it something that you should do? Like every other hobby, there's all kinds of conflicting opinions, and this is what I got. Some people said, no, you should never do it. It's terrible. Don't do it. It's awful. It's too much yeast in there. You're going to overpitch. It's going to not work. Then you got other people in there like, I do it all the time. Works great. So, you get that red versus blue thing. When I run into that on the internet, I think like, okay, I'm going to try this myself. I'm going to find out firsthand whether this works or not. So that's what I did. I took the yeast slurry from this batch and I poured a new wort on top of it. Now, a little bit of details here. A few things you should know before you think about doing this. The time between you bottle your beer or keg it and when you add the new wort to that yeast should not be very long. Okay? So if you're doing an all grain batch, don't package your beer, leave that yeast in there, and 6 hours later dump your new beer onto it. I would never spend 6 hours doing an all grain beer just to dump it on a bed of yeast that's been sitting there for that long. That's a waste of time. You never know what's going to happen with that. Okay? And I think that's probably where some people have had, some bad experiences, doing it, right? And say, don't do it, it doesn't work. It tastes terrible. So I think that it's probably best if you're doing an all grain batch and you're going to do this, make sure that you have it worked out so you can package your beer while you're making your all grain. Even while you're doing your mash or something, or your mash out. I don't know. You just don't want a lot of time to go by. For me, because it's the first time I've tried this, I went out, I got myself a couple of cans of Cooper's IPA. It's a slightly darker beer than this, which is really what you want. You don't want to brew a lighter beer than what you brewed with the yeast that you're going to use, because you might have some flavors carry over. So I thought, well, I'll get, something a little darker, because when you're not washing your yeast, then you're going to have flavors carry over. There's going to be hop residuals there, and anything you added to the beer flavor-wise are also going to be there at the bottom of the fermenter. All right? So you don't want to brew like a blonde beer and expect to get a blonde beer or a cerveza out of that combination. It ain't going to work. So I went out and got myself 2 cans of IPA, pre-hopped. Now, that's because I don't want to spend a lot of time or invest a lot of time or money into this experiment. I thought, you know what? I'm going to brew one of them just with normal, everyday, whatever I always do. And the other one, I'm going to brew it on top of the yeast bed that we got from this. And we'll see what happens. It's not really a fair comparison because, there's flavors in this beer that are going to be residual, left over in that yeast bed. Plus there was the flavor pack with all those pieces of stuff that we threw in, which I got most of them out, but there's still some left over in there, and there's going to be hops in there too. So you're dealing with, I guess what you sometimes call sloppy seconds, that yeast is going to have whatever you had in your last beer. There's going to be leftovers in there, and they're going to carry over into your next beer. If you don't care about that, or if you're brewing the same kind of beer next time, perfectly fine. I'm only doing this as an experiment, so I did the one Cooper's kit, just normal, the way I always do them, and the other one I put in on top of this yeast slurry here. So that's what I did. And so if the one with the yeast slurry doesn't work, I still have the other one, so I've got some beer for next 2 weeks or whatever it is after this one's gone. So it's an experiment, and I will tell you guys, I will not lie to you. If it doesn't work, if it tastes like crap, if it's over pitched, like some people say there's too much yeast there, you can't do that, So a lot of people are paranoid about, this is why I asked talk to John Palmer. I said, are there things that you think that people worry too much about? And he had a few answers to that. There's lots more out there that people just, either they haven't tried it and they've read stuff and you can't do that. Oh, okay. Or they've tried it and something went wrong, you never know. So if you're in question, put something together that's quick, easy, and cheap, and try it yourself. Even if it's a 1 gallon batch or whatever. And try it and see what happens, That's the only way you can figure out whether it's going to work. Because there's a lot of back and forth online. People really have their opinions, and especially in a hobby like this, or any hobby like audio or anything, cars, I don't know, doesn't matter what it is, people are going to have, there's always the middle road where everyone agrees on one thing, and then there's this left-right paradigm, and so if you really want to know if something's going to work or not, you got to try it yourself, and that's what I did. About an hour after I put my prepared and cooled wort onto the yeast slurry, or whatever, bed or trube or whatever you want to call it, it was fermenting like there was no tomorrow. So there's no lag time at all. I didn't have to sanitize the fermenter because it was already sanitized. I just took beer out of it, so nothing to lose there. The only thing I had to think about is you have to have your wort prepared and completely ready to put on to the yeast bed. You can't mix a can of this and a bunch of this and boiling water. You can't be making your simple beer kit in that fermenter. You got to do it in a second fermenter, and that's obviously sanitized, and get it all set up and ready, and then siphon it into the one with the yeast in it. So that seems like a bit of a waste of time. So what I did was, once I siphoned it from that fermenter into the one with the yeast in it, then I made a second batch and put it in the empty fermenter and topped it up and made the second batch of beer for a backup. Does that make sense? God, I hope so. Jeez. If you're half in the bag, I just lost you. As it warms up, I can definitely really taste those wonderful flavors in there. That's a great beer. I'm enjoying that. You can't go wrong. Yeah, it's a great way to brew. Saves time. You know what? When I was interviewing John Palmer, he said something that really made me think. He said, when you're going to slave over a pot of wort and add your hops and spend all this time making your beer, you owe it to yourself to make the best beer possible. And I thought about that, because there's times when I just don't have a lot of time. And am I making the best beer possible? Yes. Because I'm making the best beer possible with the time that I have on hand, or with the space that you have. If you're brewing beer in a motorhome, or something like that, you can't do all grain. You don't have these big pots and whatever's, you know. You're doing it simple ways. You know, you're doing it with simple ingredients. You're brewing the best beer that you can make with what you've got at hand, space and the time that you have. And that's a good way to think. Listen, if I didn't do YouTube, and if I didn't do Friday night broadcasts every week, I would have a lot more time to brew all grain beer. But I don't. Because I do all these other things, I don't have that time. But I tell you, I am not disappointed, because I can make perfectly good beer from extract, and it's fine. And there's no reason why anyone should think that you can't do it. So that's it. I will let you guys know how that turns out. So far, it smells fine coming out of the airlock. It smells fine. It smells a little bit like this beer, actually, because of what was left down the bottom there. We'll see what happens. See if it goes south. Maybe next week or the week after, we'll taste it, and I'll let you know if it works. Then you guys can take all that you can take this video or that video and go back to the forums and say, ha ha, guess what? It works. If it doesn't work, well, then I leave it up to other people to try it for themselves and see what they think about it. That's the mystery that we've got right now. We have to see what happens. All I know is I got airlocks going on back there that sound like music to my ears. Music to my ears. I know there's lots of beer brewing, and that's all good. So we have more beer kits to brew up. We got another Brewer's Best. I'll probably do that off camera, but I'll let you know what it is and how it tastes. And I have 2 DeFalco beer kits that I'm going to brew up. I might videotape one of those, do the other one offline, so I can, off camera that is, so I can just, brew by myself sometimes. Brewing is a very enjoyable thing. Throw on some tunes, and you just do it. It's great stuff. For all you guys who are just getting started in home brewing, you will not look back. And if you have any problems or any questions about what you're doing, 17brewcrew.com. It's a forum, and believe me, you will not be left without an answer in there. All right? I can promise you that. You will get an answer. And from very, very nice people. There are no discriminations going on in this forum at all. Not that there isn't any other forum, I'm just saying. I know this forum because I'm in there. And it's a great place to hang out and ask questions. There's even a live chat in there too, that you can go in and, see who's in there and talk, right? So, anyways, that's it for me. Just a little bit of residual information. tgtshirts.com, and we're making new shirts. And in case you haven't noticed, this is a different camo hat than I normally wear. We have some new merchandise that we're developing, so stay tuned and go to tgtshirts.com and keep that bookmarked so you can check back. And, we still have these shirts, but I don't know how long we're going to have them for because we're making new designs, so we'll see what happens. If you want one of these, you better get one because who knows how long we're going to have them available. And thank you to all you wonderful people who bought one. But new designs are on the horizon, and it's just, we're looking forward to new things. And hats. Let me see if I can find, I got my one upstairs. I'm not going to show it. No. This is the camo hat. There are other hats we're playing around with too that we have. So it's all good stuff. Okay, I think that is it. Let's end this video by saying cheers. 17. If you don't know what that means, it just means cheers. Put it simple. Long story. And thank you for watching. I want you guys to be safe, drink good beer, and make good beer. Thanks very much. Take care.